In this lesson, we are going to take a look at contexts and how they work in Dialogflow. So, what are contexts? The best definition I've heard of contexts are they help you keep track of what has already happened in the conversation till this point. So, let's take a look at an example. Let's say that the user asks, what is the color of mercury? So it comes back with the answer you asked for the color of mercury. And let's say that the user wants to find out the radius of mercury. Now they might say something like, what is its radius? And you can see that Dialogflow is just going to the default fallback intent because it did not understand what is the meaning of the word its in this case, like what does its refer to. Now it's actually possible to solve this by using Dialogflow's context feature, but there is a catch, and I will explain what that is as we go through this video. So let's just look at what happened here before that. The user is first asking for the color of a planet, and then they are asking for its radius. In other words, they changed the attribute that they were asking and made the planet the same. That is, the planet is still the same, but the attribute they are interested in has changed. So what you should do in that case is you go to this intent user asks for attribute of planet, and you open this tab here, the section here called context, and click on this add context. And here you have these two things, an input context and an output context. So once again, this is much easier to explain by showing an example rather than trying to explain what the definition of input and output context is. So what I'm going to do here is, we know that the planet attribute has been set. Okay, so now what I'm going to do in addition to that is I'm going to change this thing called lifespan to 1. And I don't want to go into too much detail into this right now, why I'm changing the 5 to 1, but you can go ahead and take a look at my website, and I have some articles about it over there, and I think that they usually do a good job of explaining why I changed this. So let's go ahead and save it. So once we set this attribute, planet attribute set, once we set this context, what I can do is I can ask, what is the color of mercury? And one thing that I want you to notice is that it comes back with the response, of course, but it also, you can see that it says there is a context which has been set, and that is the planet attribute set. Now I can go into this I can go into some more detail into what is inside this context. It's actually a way to save the state of what has happened in the conversation. Now actually I'm kind of changing my mind. I don't want to go into that yet because I think that's a bit complex. So instead what I'll do is, so remember that what was the goal? The first thing that the user asks for is a specific attribute of a planet, and then they change the attribute that they are interested in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new intent. I'm going to call it user changes attribute. Okay, and here I'm going to take that context we saw before, and I'm going to put it as the input context into this intent, and I'm going to keep the same as the output context, and we will see why in just a minute. And let's go ahead and save that. Now the training phrase will be something like, what is its, and then that will be followed by one of the possible attributes. Okay, so I'm going to say, what is its radius, right? So what you see here is it has identified and annotated the entity called attribute, and it has not done anything with the planet because we don't make any mention of the planet name in the training phrase. So maybe I'll have one more training phrase which is quite similar, and it's radius. Let's do that. So you can see again that it's identified the entity called attribute, and it has resolved the value to be radius. And let's go ahead and say this too. So what I've done till now is I have set an input context which is the same as the output context of the first intent, planet-attribute-set, and I have also set an output context, but this will be more important for the next step, so let's not worry too much about that yet. Now the response here is going to be something like this. It is going to say you asked for, and again this is the dollar attribute that is simply coming from whatever it extracted from the training phrase over here. But now you have to say what is the planet name. How do I know what the planet name is when I'm trying to complete the sentence? And the way you can say that is you can take a look at this context attribute, right? And you can say hash planet attribute set dot, and you go for the name of the planet. Okay, so you say that, and I'm going to go and confirm that that's the name of the parameter that we saw over there. Yeah, so it's the same. It's called dot planet. Okay, that's great. So now let's go back to this intent called user changes attribute. And so what is happening here? What's happening here is Dialogflow, when we set the output context in Dialogflow for the intent called user asks for attribute of planet, the context is going to store the parameters that are extracted in that training phrase. In other words, if I were to type, so this would be a good time to try this. So let's say, what is the color of Mercury? Let's just change it just to make sure it's working correctly. And it's asking for what it says, what you ask for the color of Venus, and you can see that it's set this context attribute to planet attribute set. And also if you go and look at the parameters that it was able to extract, you can see that it got the planet as Venus and the attribute as color. Now if I were to say what is its radius, see, now you can see that it's working as we are expecting, because it's saying you asked for the radius of Venus, which is exactly what we wanted. And the way that works is it looked at the context called planet-attribute-set, and it already contains, so this context can contain values. It can store the values from previous steps in the conversation, which is exactly what's happened here. And you have to use the specific syntax. You have to say hash followed by the context name and then a period, and then you have to follow that with the name of the that you used.